Good afternoon, and thank you for joining this session. I just want to speak very, very briefly about some enormous challenges that we have in society and the opportunities for digital innovation to address these challenges. So once again, my name is Barry Shrier. I'm the founder and chief executive of Giant Health, and very, very proud to collaborators who are going to talk to you about a new DTx Impact Venture. I just wanted to say very, very briefly a summary of the situation. There's that famous phrase in Chinese history, which is a greeting, and also it's allegedly a curse, which is, may you live in interesting times. And I think the interesting element of that is, in fact, 5,000 years ago, that was a curse. But for us, we view that as an opportunity. We love the phrase from JFK, who said, most people look at things and say, why? We like to look at situations and to say, why not? So what we're about to launch is an exciting new opportunity in digital therapeutics that we're going to be talking about. And it's to address some enormous, exciting challenges and changes. Challenges in society, for example, relating to aging and the cost of the healthcare system required to deal with that. Challenges in the world of hospitals relating to the fact that, of course, over 100 years ago, hospitals were invented to deal with chronic conditions across society, which no longer exist or are no longer the biggest challenges in healthcare. Challenges in the pharma industry, where, for example, we know that if you take a drug to deal with an ailment, that doesn't necessarily provide the cure. And challenges in society at large, like the fact that we have growing issues relating to obesity, which is actually a man-made challenge. The challenges in healthcare are very much in society of our own making, so we need our digital innovations to help us unmake the problems of our own behavior, which is very exciting. It's an enormous opportunity, and I'm very, very proud to be involved in the launch of a new digital therapeutics initiative to address these challenges. So thank you, everybody, and very happy to introduce my co-founder, Tony. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry. And it's my pleasure to introduce our new initiative, DTx Impact Ventures. And we all, as Barry said, we believe that digital therapeutics has a tremendous potential to address many of our key healthcare challenges in the future, both health outcomes, but also health economics. So over the next 30 minutes, I will focus on DTx, key trends and opportunities. I'll pass on to Shafi, who will explain more about the purposes and scope of DTx Impact Ventures. And finally, I'm very excited with our guest speaker, who you can see there, and Iain, and he'll be speaking about our first DTx Innovation Challenge, which is extremely exciting for all of us. So during our exploration of designing what we're calling DTx Impact Ventures, we spoke to many digital therapeutics players, healthcare thought leaders, pharma corporations, and they've all been amazingly supportive and collaborative with us. It's just a very supportive environment. And in terms of the definition, this is the definition of DTx by the Digital Therapeutics Alliance. And I do need to mention the excellent work being done by the DTA in supporting the development of the sector. And they published 10 fundamental principles for DTx, and the first two are to prevent, manage, or treat a medical disorder or disease, and secondly, a medical intervention that is driven by software. And these are two fundamental driving principles behind everything that we do. So this slide is looking at comparing DTx with traditional pharma, and we know traditional pharma has been going for many years, and DTx is quite recent. And the basis of both is always about human health, the outcomes, validated clinical efficacy. But for me, the biggest difference is that DTx continuously iterates. It's based on fast data feedback loops, and we're continuously iterating and adapting and evolving change. Whereas when drug companies are produced and approved, they will not change for 10 years plus. And that has quite a lot of difference in the culture and approach and the way products are designed, which sometimes makes collaboration difficult, but we're here to make collaboration easier and better. So the other thing is looking at active ingredients. Within what is the magic ingredient that makes actually a therapy active of pharma versus digital therapeutics? Well, for pharma, it's the molecular active agent that are absorbed into the bloodstream. And in this example, we have selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which are widely used as an antidepressant. Whereas in DTx, the magic ingredient is actually engagement. But we shouldn't underestimate what engagement actually is within DTx, because we can see through functional neuroimaging that psychotherapy such as CBT can increase serotonin transport density in, for example, addressing atypical depression. So really, both drugs and DTx engagement can have a molecular change and chemical process in the brain. And used in combination, we believe very strongly they can be even more powerful. So there's been a lot, even I mentioned that DTx, and we heard from Sophie Park as well with G4A, a lot of interesting stuff about DTx. It's a new industry, but it's actually evolving very fast. And looking from left to right, we have WellDoc and Armada. In fact, WellDoc was probably the most original DTx, and they were just founded in 2005. But they're more than DTx. In fact, they've evolved from DTx, as you may have heard from Andre speaking earlier with Prosoma, and they're much more extended care disease management. That includes sometimes elements of DTx. When you move into the center of that, you've got Pear and Valibria, which is part of the Gaia group in Germany, who are Digger endorsed. They're more horizontal players. They have certain types of CBT or some sort of mental mechanisms and prescription reimbursement. And what they're doing is they're gradually moving horizontally into other therapies. They're moving horizontally. We believe there's more work to be done vertically. And most DTx up to date has been about digitizing proven therapies, especially around CBT. And I think very much that much of the low-hanging fruit has been taken. But there is really interesting stuff where companies like Achille are looking at validating completely new non-drug science. So Achille has created a science which is the first and only prescription treatment delivered through video games, especially for children with ADD. And I think actually may have a point to make when Iain represents the challenge going forward. And Cognito is even more recent, is very noteworthy. They're using neuroimaging and have found that using light and auditory pulses controlled by software, they can stimulate functional connectivity between areas of the brain. And they've been looking at actually addressing Alzheimer's during that way. And they've been recently awarded FDA breakthrough device designation in the US. So, of course, every company, and I think that's what Andre finished off with earlier on Prosoma, the commercialization strategy is so important, and it's been a rapid evolution of reimbursement, especially in digital therapeutics. There's Digger in Germany, there's the FDA in the USA, and there's very, very rapid developments. UK and Belgium probably very much ahead of the game in Europe. But in my opinion, the key gatekeepers, and I think Orca has mentioned this as well in talks in the past, is the GP and physician. And we need to be able to have trust and confidence and support of the clinical interface, shall we say. And this is where I think DTx players can work collaboratively with pharma. Pharma spends hundreds of millions, if not billions, working with the medical community. And as we saw earlier with Sophie Park, with Bayer G4A, pharma has the muscle to supercharge distribution if there's a complementary benefit for them. So this is another point. The FDA and other regulators have been active contributors. And in our opinion, the regulation and compliance is very much the start point. You know, we have to have, obviously, clinical efficacy for the intervention, procedures for safety, information security, and risk management. But DTx companies still need to prove economic benefit to healthcare providers, especially very complex healthcare providers like the NHS, and to insurance payers and others. And obviously to also achieve, there's no point having engagement with one person, you have to have engagement with millions of people, and that's where distribution adoption is so important as well. So commercialization and rapid adoption are the key challenges going forward. So we're here today, there's been a few years and it's changing rapidly. What are the key things? Why now is it important? Well, technology is critical. We've seen about regulators and payers. Technology is really moving forward with personalized medicine, new sensors, and as I mentioned earlier, advances in neuroimaging. And data, real-time data feedback, measuring side effects and progression. Consumers and physicians, COVID has been tragic, but it actually has changed attitudes towards remote care and actually self-managed care more in 1 year probably than the last 5. And cost and skills, we've seen with increased pressure with chronic diseases, comorbidities, and of course a pandemic, we have a lot of pressure. We've got to look at more cost-effective models of providing care. So we've been working with many early-stage companies, seed stage and above, in DTx, and we've observed consistent challenges which turned out to be actually the premise, which Shafi will go on to, as to what we're looking to do. And these have turned out to be quite repetitive problems. So, for example, identifying and working with hospitals and onboarding medical specialists is just very difficult. You know, so many DTx companies and digital health companies now approaching healthcare providers. Who do they select? How do they get on board? It's just too complex. Designing effective pilots and clinical trials and reducing delays. You know, there's no point having to wait so long for ethics and recruitment. These can be really compressed and made more simple. And really the compliance part is more complex than a typical startup is able to look at, like implementing quality management systems, information security, and risk management. And finally, probably the hardest thing as well is you've got all these component, different parts working together. How do you build this multifunctional team? You need mobile design, you need data science, you need regulation and compliance, content creation, making even video games, clinical trial design, and also commercialization and pharma cooperation. So really complicated for a typical startup to be able to get their teeth around. And I think I like this, John mentioned earlier, you know, start from the patient and work backwards. And this is our North Star. Everything we do, our central focus is always the patient, the individual that will benefit from the intervention. And of course, if it's a child, as in the case of older hay, it's the parents or the guardians, they have a key role to play. Secondly, we focus on the physician, specialists, and other caregivers in the healthcare system. And only then can we really understand how to work and cooperate with the early stage ventures and with our corporate partners and the pharmaceutical players. And now it's my pleasure to introduce, or don't need to introduce Shafi, do I? He's been off the stage 100 times already, so I'll pass on to Shafi.
Sure. Thank you so much. So it's really exciting for us. At Giant, we've been around for a number of years, working with innovators, startups, VCs, trying to bring that community together. And now we thought it's about time we did our own thing and used that community and our networks and relationships to launch our fund. So it's really going to be an amazing ride and journey for us. And Liverpool seems a great place to launch this because we've seen so many great speakers about how Liverpool becoming an innovation hub. And I'm so impressed by the city and the kind of the energy and enthusiasm around that. So as Tony mentioned, it has to be about patients. We talk about technology, we talk about innovation. Ultimately, at the heart of this is the patient. How do we improve quality of care? So our remit is going to be how do we reduce the kind of the life years wasted with disability and illness? How do we improve that and improve quality of life? How do we also combine treatments? It's not just about one treatment. We have existing drug treatments that's been validated, it's good. How do we add value in conjunction? It's going to be synergistic. It's going to be additive. It's going to improve the outcomes. And also not to have too much friction. Because, you know, friction is difficult in healthcare systems, a lot of barriers to adoption. How to make that seamless for people who want to bring in an idea like Prosoma, who spoke earlier, looking at cancer kind of treatment for patients. So those are kind of our reasons for running this DTx. Excuse me. What we're going to do is just help co-design. Obviously, a lot of hospitals, a lot of healthcare systems have enormous challenges that they need solutions for. So how do we help them with that? We don't just throw technology. It's designing, okay, what are those challenges look like? Is it a patient with COPD? Is it a diabetic? What do they need to help support either the behavioral problems or indeed taking up drugs or medicines or whatever? How do we add value to that? And so we see ourselves as an intersection between the kind of the early stage ventures, healthcare as a whole, and biopharma. Pharma obviously have a huge interest in using different kinds of modalities of treatment, as we've seen earlier with here. And what we've seen recently is accelerated clinical trials. There's a whole load of papers in the Lancet and the Nature on how we're changing the framework of clinical trials. We've seen vaccines come in within a short time period because of the necessity for bringing patients quickly and testing out some new therapies. So we'll be looking at that and using latest ideas around clinical trials and adoption. So look, what's our team? I think we've got the right skill sets, and that's what we've been working hard on, to bring the right kind of partnerships around technology, people who understand business, who are entrepreneurs, know right, and successful businesses like Barry, for example, advisors and mentors like Tony for the UNDP, global people who really understand the challenge and how to succeed. bring those ideas to market. So this is a kind of what we're thinking of as our kind of gateway, our network of bringing that collaboration together. And the key word of all of this is, I'm sure I've explained to you in the whole day today, is about collaboration. You can't do it on your own. Healthcare needs collaborators, needs industry partners. It needs hospitals, innovators like Iain, to bring it all together. And that's the key. How do we fuse that together to be really successful and to provide those solutions to those problems we're discussing? So we talk about standalone kind of therapies, how we add value to that or on its own. We can add treatments together to improve the efficacy. But overall view, we think that we can improve not just the kind of the disease process, it's the physical mental health needs. One thing that's very obvious for last year is how bad mental health has affected all of us and how important it is to understand people's holistic approach to their care so that we can enable a better society. And ultimately what we want is to prevent illness. We want to be well. We want to maintain wellness and well-being, prevent these admissions to hospital, take away costs associated with that. So our vision is much more global, of reducing cost and increasing impact overall. And this kind of example, what we think we can do. Of course, what this does is produce lots of data. Of course, it'd be crazy not to use data in a way that it's meant to be used. Very specific, targeted, make more personalized medicine. So all things that we do will drive data analysis, as we've seen earlier with AI, deep machine learning. How do we use that data on a population scale, like a city of Liverpool, or indeed a region, or indeed maybe a country or much further? So it's again using that information in a different way. Of course, pharma and biopharma have done amazing things, of course, but they also struggle in understanding how to navigate through the healthcare system, as we've seen earlier in our discussions about the NHS. So how do we help foster that relationship with them? How do we help them navigate through the quagmire of healthcare sometimes? How do we improve that, make it much more efficient, so we can see real time, within 6 months, 12 months, real change, and looking at how we adopt change very quickly and translate those ideas into clinical practice. And Iain will tell you the difficulties around that, I'm sure, but they've managed well at Alder Hey of really bringing innovation to the heart of an organisation. So obviously, our areas of focus would be quite wide-ranged. We'll be looking at oncology, looking at all these systems, as you've seen, and looking at comorbidity. A lot of patients have more than one disease or illness, which we can help adopt and support. So it's looking at how we use these technologies to improve that, the health of those patients. I mentioned earlier about the kind of long-term conditions, COPD, asthma, diabetes, many others. And did you know 60% of all the resources of the NHS goes to paying for chronic diseases? It's a lot of money, a lot of things to impact. If we can solve some of those problems, we'll save money, and we'll be able to redistribute that money in different ways and perhaps access mental health better. So these are the kind of percentages we've seen of people with problems overlapping with chronic disease and long-term problems such as mental health. And it's a problem that needs solving. We know that. A lot of people are now figuring out how to manage this better. If you look at the areas that we're thinking of, these are the kind of areas that we've highlighted, what we think we can add value. Well, it's about the clinical pilot study for early startups, looking at the regulatory compliance, looking at partnerships through hospitals and academic health science networks, for example, looking at corporate innovation partnerships with major companies, and looking at product and human factor design, as well as the other things you've seen in the scaling up to data science tech, talent acquisition, and ongoing support. So we're going to be offering all of these ideas and saying that we can do much more than just saying, here's a startup and we'll encourage you to work. It's how do you get involved in the whole process and that journey of a startup. So that's kind of my bit around what we're going to do. But obviously, one of the most inspirational guys in healthcare in the UK is Iain, there's no question. When I look around who's doing amazing things and which hospitals are adopting change, Alder Hey are in a league of their own. And we're so pleased to have them as support with us. And also Iain's passion and drive to innovate, not just here locally, but nationally, internationally. So we're so pleased he's joining us on this journey. Iain.
Thank you very much. You can see me with, in real life, I can go red with kind of embarrassment. It's such a lovely introduction. I think most people here actually know me and know Alder Hey, but for the viewers at home, I want to give you a little bit of background about what Alder Hey is all about. Now, Alder Hey is a really, really special place. It's been looking after the children in Liverpool for well over 100 years. And it's a massive children's specialist hospital on the edge of Liverpool. Now, the thing that I really, really like about Alderhay is that it does primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary level care. And what that actually means is that if you need complex cardiac surgery, you come to us. And if you need to have advanced tumor therapies, you come to us. But if you fall over and scrape your knee, then you come to us as well. We will do the full spectrum from what would be regarded as trivial right up to the highest end of medicine. And I think that's why it gets such a nice place within Liverpool, because everyone has either been treated here or has a member of family who's been treated here, or has got some connection to the place itself. So when I was asked, can you give us a challenge? Can you give us an idea for digital therapeutics that could lay it down? I thought I'd try and kind of keep it in keeping with the theme of Alderhay. And not necessarily just going for the big sexy diseases that have, huge research budgets and high profile, like cancer and cardiac surgery, but actually some of the simpler things. And I think, we had a really good chat in our team actually, what would be the thing that you'd like to fix amongst the clinicians, amongst the researchers? And one thing that came out was constipation. And I know that sounds like, oh my goodness, that's a trivial thing. Constipation, that's nothing, but it's really, really serious. It's a big problem and it causes huge amounts of harm, both psychologically and physically. I have, as a surgeon, had to pull stomas on a child. They were so constipated because they were going into renal failure from the toxicity of it. Isn't that incredible? 30% of children will have a significant episode of constipation at some point in their life. That's a huge amount, and it's really difficult to treat. It fills clinics. It's a huge amount of impact on general pediatricians, pediatric surgeons. And it's simple things like people don't present early enough with it. They don't come into they don't get treated properly early enough. And as a result, it takes ages to get them out of it. The treatment regimes are really difficult to stick to. Can you imagine giving a child a medication every single day, which involves drinking half a litre of fluid or a litre of fluid every day for 2 years? Is a 4-year-old going to go with that? Trying to track their symptom progression. Things change, whether it's a warm day or a cold day. There's huge social and deprivation-associated factors. There's changing their behaviour around food and what they eat. So I think it's an absolute sitter for a digital therapeutic intervention. And I'd like to kind of try and build its profile, because it's not something people talk about. And I'd really like to see it fixed, as with most of the clinicians at Alderhay as well. So that's kind of our challenge there. We'll put it down. And we're always willing to work with companies or people who have innovative solutions out there. And we've got a portal as well that we bring this stuff in through. So I'll hand you back. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ian. And what a wonderful challenge it is. And there's no better time than, well, behavioral change is difficult at the best of times, but there's no better time than to try and instigate behavioral change than in childhood. And it's definitely one of the Public Health England's top priorities to have a best start in life. And it covers so many different things, from dietary to sedentary to just general awareness of the sort of lifestyle factors that affect and environmental factors that affect, and a lot of social impact as well in terms of the differences there, and obviously increasing levels of childhood obesity. So we're really open now for collaborations and partnerships. Obviously, Alderhay is fantastic. We're looking for hospital trial partners. We're looking for DTx Ventures out there that have therapies in the areas that we're looking into. And of course, we really do believe in the collaboration with pharmaceutical companies to come up with better standards of care.